Save the Semantics, episode 57. It is January 19, 2019. My name is Myro. This is the podcast where I ramble on about things that currently interest me. Maybe I'm looking back on some things that I've lived through. Just stuff, just stuff. This is the Stuff podcast where I talk about any stuff that relates to me and my incredibly mundane life for the most part. Gone through about, what is it now, 2 weeks? 2 weeks of school. It's going by fast already. And, the feeling of the year is already going by fast. We're already 20 days into the new year, and it doesn't feel like it. I felt like a week ago it was New Year's. It's just the time, you just feel there's just a shift in time, I guess. And, I just know that I'm going to take this time that I have for granted. Well, I do say that, but maybe I don't take it for granted. I think I do take it for granted for sure. Like, I still feel like I'm trying to maximize my time into doing something either productive or beneficial to my well-being, whatever that may be. Learning a new song on an instrument, reading a book or whatever, getting around to the book that I've been trying to read for the last couple of months, that sort of thing, I guess. Something that stereotypically enhances your state of mind, I guess. Aside from looking at your phone, watching YouTube, watching Netflix, watching Hulu, watching Amazon, watching anime, I don't know, all that stuff. Just sitting down and watching instead of doing that. Taking the time to appreciate other arts. Speaking of appreciating other arts, I was playing some video games, which is, I think it's a little more, I guess, in terms of what I've been talking about, just enhancing your mind. I think video games is a little more beneficial to your kind of just improving yourself as a person in a way. Maybe you could talk about like hand-eye coordination, dexterity, that kind of thing. Because nowadays if you do practice enough at a video game, you could end up at a level where you could support yourself by being a professional gamer. That's just a thing now. It's a novelty, but it's currently viable. It's entirely possible. You can you don't even have to be a professional gamer. You could be pretty good at the game, and then you can stream yourself on Twitch. Let's plays aren't really as popular as they used to be on YouTube, but Twitch is now the go-to thing. People pay money to see you play video games. It's just sort of the common thing now, I guess. I feel like it's been kind of a thing as of late, or for a little while now. It's something that I haven't really caught on to yet in terms of my own enjoyment. I much prefer watching I do listen to podcasts and other podcasts and stuff like that, but Twitch streaming is a little different, I guess. It's less fulfilling for me, I think, and also it doesn't really run that well on my computer for some reason. I think it's just because I have an old ass computer, old 2011 MacBook Air, but I think it's just not as engaging to me. I definitely understand why people watch it, though. I understand sort of like maybe you as a person can't necessarily afford to buy a certain game, or you don't have that console, so I understand how that feels. You're able to enjoy commentary from someone who has a personality and is able to command your attention, and you can enjoy them playing a game that you've played before and you enjoyed playing, and so you want to see their reaction to certain events or certain gameplay aspects of that game. Or you want to be able to kind of vicariously live through someone else's gameplay, I guess. I don't know. You know what I mean? I think that I understand. I definitely understand the audience behind streaming and that kind of thing. I used to be like kind of like vehemently like I wouldn't say opposed to it, but I was kind of hating on it just because it was sort of this new upcoming genre of entertainment that I didn't really understand, you know? So back then, before PewDiePie kind of switched his content style from Let's Plays to now his more commentary-esque channels, like he was sort of the streaming kind of man-child kind of persona, and I didn't really buy into that. And I think I was relatively valid in my point in disliking that type of content because it mostly catered toward a younger audience. But I looking back on it, I definitely understand why his fan base grew to be so big. Like I'm sure he had, when he did use that kind of persona, people were definitely more, like kids especially, were more attracted to that because like he kind of had that personality of like I don't know, like a loud kid in the schoolyard. I don't know. I'm trying to kind of think of a analogy here, but you know what I mean. He's like boisterous and I guess in a way charismatic enough to get that big of a audience. So I definitely understand where that comes from in a sense. That kind of culture comes from. Going back to my point what I was trying to make in terms of video games and stuff like that, and enjoying different types of mediums. I haven't. No. I've been playing quite a bit of games recently. Not constantly, maybe like an hour or a few hours every day. Nothing too crazy. Smash Bros. A little bit of Fortnite again. It's fun. I know it's a popular thing to hate, and it's also a popular thing that it's a popular thing to hate because it's popular, and also a lot of kids play it. So once you have that label attached to the game, you're kind of inclined to be like, oh, I'm turned off by it. But no, it's fun, it's well made for the most part. I'm sure other people have had their praises with it, I think it does have its frustrating moments for sure. I think some elements of the gameplay are kind of like a little tacky, I think. Some of the items that you can use are, obviously not as effective, but for the most part, it's fun and it's fine. I don't think there's really anything wrong with it. They've done a pretty good job with how they've built the game. The gameplay is relatively solid for the most part. That's all I have to say about Fortnite. Smash Bros. I've put maybe like, based on what my Switch tells me, I've put in maybe like an odd some 50 hours into it, and it's crazy how much time adds up, like if you do play every day. Because I remember I don't know if I'm ever gonna go back to it. Unfortunately, this is just kind of what happens, when a newer version of a game comes through. With the exception of like Melee and stuff like that. With like when the new Smash Bros came out, I was like, I did keep playing, Smash 4 on the 3DS up until the point that I received the newest Smash Bros and the Switch, and then I haven't touched my 3DS since, and I don't know. I don't know if I'm gonna go back to it anytime soon. I just have no reason to, there's no one. I think I started to play it more once I realized, like, oh shit, I forgot there was even like an online function. I think that this was like a couple years ago, when I was definitely playing it a lot more. It was interesting. Like when I initially bought it way back in like 2014, I played it quite a bit. I played all the modes. I got kind of tired of like the single player modes. I played some 1v1 matches and stuff like that, and then I was like, oh shit, I should there's one thing that I haven't tried, which is online matchmaking, and for the most part I thought it worked out pretty well. you know, considering Nintendo's handling of online gaming is like pretty shitty, and it still is kind of shitty even with the newest edition of the Smash on the Switch. But I had a good time with Smash 4's online play for the 3DS for the most part. I think it had the way it like set up matches for the most part. Like, of course, it's like it was just simple, you know. Like it wasn't like it was just like it had a few modes, like for Glory, which is the main one you played for. I don't know why you would. I don't know. I never did for fun. There were two. Well, for those, I'm just kind of saying shit. But for those who never played Smash on the 3DS, there were two sections of like play styles for online matchmaking that you could choose. It was for fun, which was much more casual. You could use items and stuff like that, and for Glory, no items and purely like stock battles with a time limit. I think that was like one draw that I wasn't a fan of. Was it was like a very short matches. You know, it was only like quick bouts, 2-minute matches maybe more or less. So that was that, and I had a lot of fun just doing 1v1. Most of the time I got my ass handed to me, you know, but I got better. I definitely got better for sure. And yeah, I had my fun with it for the most part. I know, like, yeah, Nintendo's sort of notorious for its, you know, incompetence with, you know, the online matchmaking, but I think, you know, for what it did, I thought it did a pretty good job for the 3DS. I remember because I used to play on my older 3D or older DS Lite. I used to play some, you know, I don't even really have I didn't even really have like multiplayer games on my DS. I think I just mostly played single player. There were a couple of like online modes that I tried out, but it just didn't work because like the way you had to set up the Wi-Fi for the DS was so tacky and so it was pretty egregious. I'm gonna be honest, because like it was just you had to have like a separate device connected to your computer, and sometimes it didn't even work because like you were too far away from the Wi-Fi adapter or whatever it was called. You had to be close enough in range, and sometimes it didn't even sync up and shit. It was just so it was broken, you know. This was before like Wi-Fi, like connectability with like other systems was like a thing, you know. It wasn't like embedded into the system where it was like okay, because like now the Nintendo Switch, like you can sort of just if there's Wi-Fi, it connects. I don't know. I forgot how I set it up, but the network capability of the older DS was complete garbage. You know, the internet you could barely use the internet. You had to use, like I said, you have to use like a separate device. And that if that device was wonky and shit, you're kind of screwed. So you know, I think we, as I've said, I feel like we do take for granted like sort of the strides that have been made, even the little things. You know, I appreciate the little things that have been improved throughout the course of my life in terms of like, you know, Wi-Fi capabilities and stuff like that. You know, and now, you know, data, like where you could just go, you know, use the internet anywhere for the most part, which is crazy. It's still because I didn't start paying for data until recently, mainly because I was kind of cheap about it. It didn't really cost too much more, to be honest. I just never got around to paying for data. But now I do use it a lot. You know, I use it to stream music. If I need directions, you know, just pull up maps and bam, you're there, you know. Because what I used to do, this is maybe like, honestly, maybe even like less than a year ago, what I used to do with my phone, if I ever needed to get directions somewhere, you know, from home, I'd use the Wi-Fi, and I would look up the location that I wanted to go on Google Maps or Apple Maps or whatever app that I'm using. I would take like multiple screenshots of where that location is, and then I would try to guess more or less where I was in relation to what the picture was holding. So it was an incredibly shitty GPS it was using a map, like it was using a section of the map, just not the whole map, you know. Um, so that's just sort of my ghetto ass way of trying to find a location. But now I don't really have to worry too much about that unless I have no service at all, which then I would just use that, or you would use an actual map, you know. I haven't really looked at an actual map in forever, although we might have some in my car just for safety. I should probably put some more maps in there just in case if I ever go on like a road trip or something like that. But just going back into sort of how much things have changed, it's pretty crazy. I think, you know. Well, of course, it's always going to be crazy, regardless of of what it is that, you know, if you're referring to like technology and stuff like that. But from my lens, you know, from my lens of playing video games on a handheld device, I do appreciate the strides that have been made. So I get less pissed off when things don't go well for me when I'm playing a game and whatnot. You know, just for my own my own comfort, and general enjoyment of just like a gaming experience. You know. I think because I before I got the Switch, I was sort of trying to go into this. Well, just to preface, I used to play my main console before I got a Switch was my 3DS. I used to play that a lot. I have quite a lot of games on there, and some older DS titles as well. I purchased. I was kind of like in this. I was before. This was kind of like the last couple of years. I was sort of in seeking for, you know, these sort of older gems for the 3DS that I never got around. 3DS/DS that I never got around to. And most of the time I tried to invest a little bit into like JRPGs because that's just sort of what I've grown up playing. I grew up playing like Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest and that kind of thing. So I kind of wanted to see what I missed out on the DS. And there's a couple of games there's a few games that I purchased in the last couple of years that are kind of okay for the most part. I think the most difficult thing when it comes to JRPGs is that the story can kind of, you know, the story is for the most part very generic, and it's hard to kind of deviate from that for the most part. But I always, you know, I can look past a mediocre story as long as like the gameplay is interesting and if the characters are relatively well written. And I think that a lot of JRPGs, like especially the ones that I've played, have sort of fallen into like, you know, there's gonna be this like almighty bad, you know, evil character, and then you sort of have to like fight against it, or there's like a conspiracy where there's like you know, bad things are happening in the world, so you have to sort of investigate it, and then you realize that people have been corrupted by this evil being from another universe or an alternate dimension, and you have to defeat that in the end. That's just sort of how things have always been in most JRPGs, you know? But what I still enjoy those games for the most part, you know, which is why I've sort of invested a little bit of time into, well, actually a pretty significant amount of time if I think about it, into these JRPGs. One game that I played, I'd say maybe like a year ago, is a game called Suikoden. Suikoden for the DS specifically. I don't know, I have no idea how to pronounce the last part, but it starts with like a T or something. I'm not even going to bother trying to pronounce it. So I guess this is just like a mini kind of review for that game. I don't know how many people actually know about that game. I know Suikoden is a pretty well-known JRPG franchise, and I've never played the originals before. You know, if they ever do remake it, or if they like release it for, whatever online download, like eShop or whatever, then maybe I'll check it out for sure. But this is sort of my introduction to the series, and I think that it sort of falls into like every JRPG trope that really ever existed. There's a kid who grew up on a farm, or like grew up on like in a small village. Something happens, and then he's kind of whisked away on an adventure. Very stereotypical. The one thing that was like really caught my attention though was like how many characters there were in the game. I think it's 100 playable characters, I think, and which is crazy. Although some of them, it's sort of like a lot of them are kind of interchangeable in terms of how you play them and whatnot. Their skills and abilities all kind of seem to be relatively the same. And once you have like a core group of 4 characters that are incredibly strong, you really have no reason to use the other characters, which is kind of disappointing, I think. And I think the story is all right. The writing is pretty solid for the most part. But I think that I don't know. There might be like a true ending or whatever, but I just don't care enough to. I haven't touched that game since I beat it a little while back. Maybe I invested like 35, 40 hours or something, which is pretty like a medium-sized JRPG game. Other games like Xenoblade Chronicles, which is one of my favorite games, I've put in maybe like 120 hours into it or something like that, which is pretty standard. So 40 is like not a whole lot for the most part. But I think that when it comes to that kind of game where it's like relatively not super well known, even though it is attached to like a popular franchise, I think it's a little lackluster in some ways. I'm still itching for another JRPG. Hoping that Dragon Quest XI comes to the Switch for North America. That would be nice. Or even I think the Switch is actually region free, so I might be able to play the Japanese version, which would be very cool. But yeah, it's what I've grown up playing, so of course I have sort of an affection for it. But I definitely understand why. I understand sort of people not being as invested in it, mainly because most JRPGs for the most part are turn-based, especially the originals, and it's not as exciting as I feel like as it used to be. I still enjoy it. There's still some strategic elements to it that I can enjoy. And I definitely should get around to playing some other JRPG games, just because I think that I'm probably missing out on quite a bit, and I feel that I can't really like make a valid point when I've only played a few games. I've really only played like one mediocre title from a relatively well-known franchise, is what I'm trying to say. That's just kind of my rambling. Anyways, that's good. That's probably going to do it for this episode. I've been checking. I don't usually do this, but no, that's a lie. I check every time I upload, but notice that I've passed 2,000 downloads, which is pretty crazy. I still don't know if most of the people that are listening are like, bots or like real people. I have no idea how to check. But I just wanted to say thank you to everyone out there that's been listening. I know there's a couple of people in other countries that are tuning in. Canada, a couple from Japan I saw. And just a little bit of a shout out to you guys out there. So I'll probably be continuing to upload on a more consistent basis like I've been doing. I think this is a pretty good schedule that I'm on, I think. And hopefully, just based on like listenership, I think is the right terminology. I think this is a good way to go. So I'm just going to keep at it And yeah, that's going to do it. Anyways, this has been Save the Semantics, signing off.